what on earth is going on? Why would President Biden use such incendiary terms to describe what may be happening?
Well, it's what is not really happening. Putin, of course, is threatening, as he has done since this whole thing began on the 24th of February, by implicitly leaving the dark cloud of nuclear weapons there that he might use. But we've seen that he hasn't used them at all. They haven't been brought out of their bunkers, out of their storage. There's been no hint of deployment in any way at all. But the temperature is certainly rising, and he's rolled out this threat again. So what Biden has done is referred him back to the last time there was a major nuclear crisis, which was 60 years ago, the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1963. And that is when Russia, the Soviet Union, deployed nuclear weapons to the island of Cuba. And John F. Kennedy, Biden's Democratic predecessor, said that if you use them, that will spell out World War III. And in the end, it was the Russians who blinked first, and that all was resolved quite happily and peacefully. And what Biden is saying now to Putin is, don't get any ideas, because we will simply go back to what we did in 1963. And it will be you who will blink first, not us. And so really his message is one of calm, to try and calm down the situation, because the temperature has been rising in the rhetoric, but not in the actual fact. There's no deployment of weapons at this moment in time.
Didn't President Kennedy capitulate as well back in the 60s with Cuba?
No, I mean, it was the Russians who were sailing, who had moved some weapons to Cuba, and others were en route. And the first thing the Russians were told was that the ships moving all your spares and all the other bits and pieces the nuclear weapons need will be sunk en route. And that didn't happen. In fact, many positives came out of the Cuban Missile Crisis, one of which was the hotline between the two superpowers, which didn't pre-exist at all. So it's still presumably there. And I think Biden is also warning the Russians in a wider sense, not just Vladimir Putin, that you need to get a control of what this man is doing. And we've heard confrontations of Putin's inner circle confronting him on his handling of the war. And there is a sense that Putin has lost control. And I think Biden is sort of underwriting this by saying, right, play this one carefully, because we don't want any mistakes here.
What it was always thought, though, back in the 60s, was that there was, as you say, that in the end it was a hotline. You always imagine a sort of red phone on both desks. But it was either that JFK deployed somebody, they say it was probably his brother, Bobby Kennedy, who actually put in a phone call and managed to talk to somebody who could talk to Khrushchev and then calmed everything down. But you get the sense that Putin isn't the same. He won't be calmed down. He's on his own, I don't know, ego battle.
Yes, I mean, there's certainly an element of that. But what we have to remember is that it isn't Putin with a red button. These weapons are initiated on both sides by complicated suitcases, and we've all seen the pictures and indeed the films portraying them. And the Russians, as far as we know, have three of these. One is in the hands of Putin, held by a sort of trusted military aide. One is with the chief of the Russian armed forces, and another is with the chief of the Russian nuclear forces. And it requires two at any one time to align to start the whole process. And then that initiates the giving of orders further down the command chain. So it doesn't blue. I think I've liked the button. It's just not like it at all. It's actually quite a long, drawn-out process. And so this isn't something that could suddenly take off. And the feeling amongst Western analysts is it's now the Russian military leadership.
Forgive me for jumping in, but does that then mean, because we've obviously had these reports from US intelligence saying there's some just discontent within his inner circle, is that then that gathers more importance, does it, as a statement? Because it's not just saying they're discontent, it also implies that they wouldn't allow him to fire nuclear weapons.
Stephen, that's absolutely right. I mean, my overall message, and I watched the temperature and the social media chatter ramp up over the last few days, and the fear. My overall message is one of calm. And, this isn't going to happen. We don't have nuclear Armageddon around the corner. But the discussion of it in a sort of public forum is what has started to make people nervous. And this is Biden trying to calm the situation down, not inflame it by threatening something. I mean, in days gone by, international diplomacy was conducted by notes of outrage between embassies and between heads of state. And nowadays, it's conducted by television and by social media. And it's in a very public forum. I mean, even 60, 70 years ago, this would be a sort of private affairs with press releases. Now it's far more open and it's difficult to avoid. And hence speed is the name of the game. And that's why Biden made the speech he did a couple of days ago.